Beside him, Clara gazed out the window, her breath fogging the glass. She hadn't said much since they left the city, and Julian hadn't pressed her. He liked that about her, how she didn't fill silence with noise. But tonight, the quiet felt different. Full. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined," she murmured, voice barely above a whisper. Julian glanced at her, really looked. The amber glow of the dashboard softened the angles of her face, catching in her dark eyes. At 28, Clara carried herself with a calm that belied her years, as if she'd already learned the cost of demanding too much from life or from men. He reached over, brushing his fingers against hers. "You deserve this. A real break. No boardrooms, no headlines, no obligations." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "And you deserve it too?" The question hung between them, delicate as the snowflakes now dusting the windshield. Julian looked back at the road. "I don't know," he admitted, voice rough. "But I needed to be here. With you. Somewhere no one knows my name. Just Julian. Just a man who forgot how to breathe." Clara turned fully toward him now. "Then breathe." He exhaled slowly, as if releasing something he'd carried for years. The truth was, he hadn't been back to these mountains since the divorce. This lodge, Caribou Ridge, had been their place. Him, Elena, and later the children. A sanctuary from his empire of steel and glass. He'd booked it on impulse, thinking the old owner would recognize him, give him the east wing with the stone hearth and the view of the frozen lake. But the reservation confirmation had come from a new management company. Anonymous, clean, perfect. He didn't tell Clara any of that. Instead, he said, "We'll have the whole place to ourselves. Just us." She leaned her head against the seat, closing her eyes. "Good. I've never shared you with anyone else before." "Not really." Julian's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her how different she was. That this time it wasn't about escape, but about connection. That he wasn't the same man who'd let his marriage crumble under the weight of his own ambition. But the words stuck like ice in his chest. The lodge emerged through the trees, timber beams, smoke curling from the chimney, warm light spilling from frosted windows. It looked like a postcard from a life he'd once dreamed of living. A life with roots, not just results. He parked, turned off the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. "You okay?" Clara asked softly. He nodded, but his hands trembled slightly as he unbuckled his seatbelt. "Yeah, just haven't been this far from everything in a long time." She touched his arm, then let go. They stepped into the snow together, boots sinking slightly. The cold bit at their cheeks, sharp and purifying. For a moment, Julian let himself believe it. This could be a new beginning. Here, where the world couldn't find him, maybe he could finally find himself. He carried their bags to the front door, heart pounding with something like hope. He didn't see the tire tracks already lining the drive. He didn't notice the second set of footprints leading around the side of the lodge. And he certainly didn't hear the high, bright laughter of 3 children echoing from the woods behind the cabins. Laughter that carried a familiar lilt, a melody he hadn't heard in over a year. A melody that once sang him to sleep. As he reached for the brass knocker, Clara squeezed his hand. "Ready?" Julian smiled, though something deep inside him flickered. Like a warning light, faint but insistent. "Ready," he said, but he wasn't. Not even close. "Certo. Agora tu como narrador e storyteller disinvolva a historia sem marcacos com o nome de cada topico que for disinvolve. Mi conti sobrio topico tu com dialogo como su fosso espectador. Sempre lembrando de disinvolver com vida moco. Com vidos sentimentos de forma que a estrutura de narrativa utiliza uma linha temporal linear de modo o espectador sentir o que o personagem está sentindo amigos. Com 6.000 characters 8:59 p.m. hours earlier, while Julian was still weaving through city traffic with Clara beside him. Elena stood at the edge of the same mountain clearing, arms wrapped around herself as if holding her own heart in place. The sun had just dipped behind the peaks, casting long violet shadows across the snow. Behind her, the lodge glowed warm, familiar, achingly unchanged. She'd brought the children here every winter since Leo, Milo, and Ava were born. It was the one place Julian had never canceled on them. Business trips, mergers, investor dinners. He missed birthdays, first steps, school plays, but he never missed Caribou Ridge. Until he did. 2 years ago, he'd sent his assistant instead. Scheduling conflict. The email read. Elena had burned it after reading it to the toddlers, who couldn't understand why Daddy's work was more important than snowmen and cocoa. But she'd kept coming. Alone. Because the children still remembered the sound of his laugh echoing off these pines. Because in this place, he'd once knelt in the snow to build a fort with them. His $5,000 coat soaked through, grinning like a boy. Now, she watched as the triplets tumbled down the gentle slope behind the lodge, bundled in matching red coats, their breath puffing in joyful clouds. "Mama, look, I made a snow angel," Ava called, flapping her arms wildly. Elena smiled, though it cost her. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Leo ever. The observer stopped mid-step. "Do you think Daddy ever came back here after?" Elena's breath caught. She knelt, brushing snow from his cheek. "Why do you ask?" "Love," he shrugged, eyes downcast. "Because if he loved it so much, why did he leave it?" She didn't answer right away. How could she explain that people don't always leave places, they leave feelings? And sometimes those feelings are too heavy to carry back. "I think," she said slowly, "he just forgot how much it mattered." Milo, the most sensitive of the three, tugged her sleeve. "But we matter, right?" Tears pricked her eyes. She pulled all three close, burying her face in their wool hats, breathing in the scent of snow and childhood. "You matter more than anything in this world. To me. And to him too, in his own way." She didn't believe the last part, not fully, but she'd learned that some lies are acts of love. Back inside, the lodge felt like a time capsule. The same pine shelves, the same crackling fire, the same photograph above the mantel. Taken 5 winters ago, Julian holding Ava on his shoulders, Leo clinging to his leg, Milo mid-laugh, and Elena leaning into his side, eyes crinkled with joy she hadn't known was fleeting. She'd considered taking it down. But the children asked for it every year. "That's when Daddy stayed," they'd say. She couldn't take that memory from them, even if it broke her a little more each time. Now, as she stirred soup on the stove, the wind picked up outside, howling through the trees. The weather report had warned of a storm, significant snowfall, possible road closure. She didn't mind. Isolation felt safer than surprise. She'd rented the entire West Wing this time. Paid extra for privacy. After everything, the public divorce filings, the tabloid headlines, billionaire's secret affair shatters picture-perfect family, the pitying glances at school pickups, she craved invisibility. Mama Ava appeared in the doorway, snowflakes melting in her hair. "Can we make the gingerbread house tonight?" "Of course, my love," Elena said, forcing lightness into her voice. "After dinner. And can we leave a light on?" In case someone gets lost in the storm, Elena paused. "Who would be out in this?" Darling, Ava just shrugged. "People who need to find their way home." Elena's chest ached. She kissed the top of her daughter's head. "Then we'll leave the porch light on, and the fire burning, and the door unlocked. Just a crack." She didn't know why she said it. Habit, maybe, or hope, stubborn as a root beneath frozen ground. Later, as she tucked the children into their bunk beds, Milo whispered, "Do you miss him?" She smoothed his hair. "I miss the man I thought he was." "Do you think he'll ever come back?" She didn't lie this time. "I don't know." But as she stood in the hallway, listening to their even breaths, she felt it. The old, quiet dread that came with snowfall in these mountains. Not fear of the storm, but of what it might bring. And then, through the window at the end of the hall, she saw headlights cutting through the dusk. Her breath fogged the glass as she watched the car slow, then stop. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing that same black coat, the one she'd bought him their last Christmas together. Her knees nearly gave way. Behind him, a woman emerged, slender, elegant, unfamiliar. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. "Not now. Not here." She turned quickly, heart hammering, and shut the children's door softly. Then she moved to the front window, hidden in shadow, watching as Julian reached for the woman's hand, as they laughed at something she couldn't hear. She recognized the way he looked at her, the softness in his eyes, the same look he'd once given her, before the calls in the middle of the night, before the distance, before the silence that grew louder than any argument. A knock echoed through the lodge. Elena didn't move. The children's voices drifted from the bedroom. "Mama, who's here?" She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked to the door. Not as the woman he'd abandoned, but as the mother of his children, the keeper of this fragile, frozen peace. She opened it. The wind rushed in, carrying snow, and him. Their eyes met. Julian's face went pale. "Elena!" She didn't speak, couldn't. But behind her, 3 small voices chimed in unison, "Daddy." And just like that, the storm wasn't outside anymore. It was here. "Daddy." Ava's voice rang out again, louder this time, laced with disbelief and something brighter, hope. Julian froze. His coat was still dusted with snow, his hand still half raised from the knock. He hadn't prepared for this, hadn't imagined, couldn't have imagined, that his past and present would collide here, in this sacred, snow-locked place where time was supposed to stand still. Elena didn't step aside. She stood like a doorframe made of bone and resolve, her eyes locked on his, searching. Not for lies, but for the truth he'd never given her. But then the children slipped past her. All 3 of them. Leo first, cautious but wide-eyed. Milo next, clutching a stuffed wolf by its ear. And Ava last, darting forward like a sparrow released, her boots thudding against the wooden porch. Before Elena could stop her, Ava threw her arms around Julian's legs. "You came," she whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. Julian's breath left him in a ragged gasp. He looked down at the red hat askew on her head, at the freckles dusting her nose. His freckles, Elena used to say, and something inside him fractured. He knelt slowly, as if afraid she'd vanish if he moved too fast. His gloved hands hovered, then settled gently on her shoulders. "I didn't know you'd be here," he said, voice raw. "But you're here now," Milo said softly, stepping closer. He didn't hug him, not yet, but his eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Are you staying?" Julian glanced past them, to Elena's tense silhouette, to the woman still standing in the snow behind him, Clara, clutching her bag like a shield. I didn't plan to," he admitted. Leo crossed his arms, suddenly sharp-eyed. "Too old for 5. You never planned to." The words landed like stones. Clara shifted, her presence suddenly too loud in the silence. She hadn't moved from the driveway, but her gaze flickered between Julian and the children, between the life he'd brought with him and the one he'd left behind. Elena finally spoke, voice low but steady. "They've asked about you every night this week, ever since the snow started falling. They said you always came when it snowed." Julian's throat tightened. He remembered. He'd promised them, once, that snow was his signal. He'd drop everything and come running. "Snow means magic," he'd told them. "And magic means family." He'd broken that spell. Now Ava looked up at him, eyes impossibly wide. "Did you bring us presents?" The question was innocent, devastating. He hadn't. He'd packed suits, cufflinks, a bottle of whiskey, things for a weekend of escape, not reunion. But before he could answer, Milo tugged at his sleeve. "It's okay. We made you something." He turned and ran inside, returning seconds later with a folded paper, slightly crumpled. "We drew you, all of us, even the snowman." Julian took it with trembling hands. The drawing showed 4 stick figures, 3 small, 1 tall, holding hands beneath a yellow sun, even though it was winter. Above them, in wobbly letters, "Our daddy is coming back." His vision blurred. Elena watched him, arms crossed, but her lower lip trembled just once, quickly stilled. Clara finally stepped forward, snow crunching under her boots. She didn't approach the children, didn't intrude, but her voice was gentle when she spoke. "Julian, maybe we should talk inside." Ava turned, noticing her for the first time. "Who are you?" The question hung, sharp as glass. Julian stood slowly, still holding the drawing. This is Clara, he said too quickly. She's a friend. A friend who sleeps in your bed, Leo asked, blunt as a winter wind. Elena's eyes snapped to Julian. So did Clara's. He flinched. Leo. It's okay, Daddy, Ava said, too sweetly. Mama says grown-ups have lots of friends, but only one mommy and one daddy. Julian looked at Elena, searching for correction, for anger. But she only stared at the ground, jaw tight, as if holding back a tide. Clara swallowed hard. I should wait in the car. No, Elena said suddenly. Her voice was quiet, but firm. It's 20 below out there, and the road's closed. You'll stay. In the east wing. The fire's lit. The offer wasn't kind, it was necessary. Controlled. A woman who'd learned to manage chaos with calm. Clara nodded, eyes glistening. Thank you. As she moved past them into the lodge, the children watched her go, curious, wary. Then Milo tugged Julian's hand again, softer now. Will you build a snow fort with us like before? Julian looked at Elena. She didn't smile, didn't nod, but she didn't say no. And in that silence, he heard the smallest crack in the ice, the faintest chance. He knelt again, pulling all three into an awkward, trembling embrace. They smelled like wool and cocoa and childhood. Yes, he whispered, voice breaking. I'll build the biggest fort you've ever seen. But as he held them, his eyes met Elena's over their heads. And in her gaze, he saw not forgiveness, but a question: is this real or just another performance outside? The wind howled. Snow fell harder, sealing them in. And somewhere deep in the lodge, a woman who didn't belong stood by a roaring fire, listening to the sound of a family she'd unknowingly trespassed upon. Wondering if love could be returned once it had been divided, or if some fractures never truly heal. The night was young. The storm was growing. Ava chattered about the snowman they'd built that afternoon. He has your scarf, Daddy. The blue one you left last time. Julian's fork stilled. He hadn't left a scarf. He'd packed up everything after the final argument. Every photo, every sweater, every trace of himself. Or so he thought. Elena didn't look up. It was in the storage closet, buried under old skis. They found it last winter. I kept it for you, Milo added proudly, in case you came back and got cold. Julian's chest ached. He wanted to say something, anything, but words felt like stones in his throat. How could he explain that he hadn't come back because he couldn't bear to face what he'd lost, not just the marriage, but the man he'd been when he was with them, present, tender, whole. Clara pushed her food around silently. She hadn't spoken since entering the lodge. Now she lifted her eyes, first to Julian, then to Elena, and asked, voice soft but clear, how long were you married? Elena paused, spoon hovering. 10 years. Together for 12. And why did it end? Clara's question wasn't prying. It was searching, as if she needed to understand whether the fault was his or fate's. Julian finally found his voice. It ended because I thought love was something you earned through success. That if I built enough, provided enough, they'd be proud of me. Safe. Happy. He glanced at the children. But I forgot that love isn't built in boardrooms. It's built in moments like this: dinner, snow, forts, bedtime stories. And I missed them all. Elena finally met his eyes. It didn't end just because you were busy, Julian. Her voice was low, controlled, but beneath it ran a current of pain so deep it chilled the room. You were already gone before the divorce, she continued. Long before the papers. You stopped looking at me like I was your home. You stopped coming to the kids' recitals. You forgot Milo's allergy to strawberries. You missed Ava's first day of preschool because of a critical negotiation in Zurich. She took a slow breath. But the real reason was her. Julian went very still. Clara's head snapped toward him. Her Elena didn't flinch. His assistant. Before you. Her name was Rachel. She was at your Christmas party. Wore a red dress. You told me she was just a colleague. Julian closed his eyes. Elena, you never slept with her in our bed. Elena cut in, voice trembling now. But you kissed her in the pantry while I was tucking the kids in. Leo saw you. He was 3. He told me the next morning that Daddy was hugging the tall lady with shiny hair. Julian's face drained of color. I ended it the next day. I swear. But you didn't tell me, Elena said, her voice breaking for the first time. You let me wonder. Let me doubt myself. Let me think maybe I wasn't enough. And all the while, you were rehearsing apologies in your head while holding another woman's hand. Silence. Even the children had gone quiet. Ava clutched her spoon like a lifeline. Clara slowly set her napkin on the table. Her hands didn't shake, but her voice did. You never told me any of this. I didn't think it mattered, Julian whispered. It was over. Done. Nothing that breaks a family is ever done, Elena said quietly. It just echoes. Milo, eyes wide, looked between them. Is that why you left, Daddy, because of the shiny-haired lady? Julian reached for him instinctively. No, sweetheart. I left because I was lost, and I didn't know how to find my way back. But you're here now, Ava said, as if that solved everything. Julian looked at her, then at Elena, whose eyes were glistening, not with tears, but with years of unspoken grief. I'm trying, he said, voice raw. I swear I am. Clara stood abruptly. I need air. She walked out without another word, the door clicking shut behind her like a period at the end of a sentence no one wanted to read. Julian made to follow, but Elena spoke again, soft but firm. Let her go. She needs to decide if she wants to be part of a man who repeats his mistakes, or one who finally stops running. He sank back into his chair, hollowed out. Leo, ever observant, whispered, Are you going to leave again, Daddy? Julian looked at his son. Really looked. Saw the fear beneath the question. The need for certainty in a world that had given him none. No, he said, and this time it wasn't a promise to them. It was a vow to himself. I'm not leaving. Not tonight. Not ever again. If you'll let me stay. Elena didn't answer, but she didn't say no. Outside, snow fell heavier, blanketing the world in white, erasing tracks, softening edges, hiding truths beneath beauty. And somewhere in the dark, Clara stood alone on the porch, staring up at the stormlit sky, wondering if love could bloom in the ruins of someone else's heart. RMS wrapped tightly around herself, breath forming small ghosts in the frigid air. The storm had softened to a hush, snow falling now in slow, deliberate spirals, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. She leaned against the cold wooden post, closing her eyes, trying to steady the tremor in her chest. She'd believed him. That was the worst part. She'd believed Julian when he said his past was clean, that his divorce had been mutual, respectful. The kind of quiet unraveling that happens when two people simply grow apart. She'd let herself think she was different, that with her, he was finally learning how to be present, how to choose love over ambition. But now she saw it. She wasn't his redemption. She was his repetition. Behind her, the lodge windows glowed amber, warm and full of life. His life. The one he'd abandoned, then returned to like a man expecting his old coat to still fit. And the children, God, the children, they hadn't asked for any of this. They just wanted their father back. And in their innocence, they didn't see the fractures in him. A floorboard creaked. She didn't turn. She already knew who it was. I'm sorry, Julian said, voice rough, standing just inside the threshold of light. He didn't step closer. I should have told you everything. Clara kept her back to him. Why didn't you? Because I was ashamed, he admitted. And because I thought if I never said it out loud, it wouldn't be real. That I could start over without dragging the past into every room. She finally turned. Snowflakes caught in her lashes. But the past is in every room, Julian. It's in the way your son flinches when you raise your voice. In the way your daughter asks if you'll stay this time. It's in the silence your ex-wife carries like armor. She shook her head. You can't outrun it. And you certainly can't build something new on top of it without clearing the rubble first. He looked down, hands shoved deep in his pockets. I didn't mean to hurt you. Didn't you? Her voice cracked. Or did you just mean to avoid hurting yourself for as long as possible? He had no answer. Inside, A child laughed. Ava's bright, bubbling sound, and the contrast was unbearable. Joy and ruin coexisting under one roof. Clara wrapped her scarf tighter. I thought I was your fresh start, but I'm just the echo of someone else's pain. No, Julian said quickly. You're not. You've been honest with me, patient. You've seen me at my worst and still showed up. That's more than I deserve. Maybe, she whispered, but love isn't about what you deserve. It's about what you're ready for. And you're not ready, Julian. Not yet. You're still trying to fix the past while pretending the present doesn't matter. He took a step forward. Then help me be ready. She looked at him, really looked, saw the desperation in his eyes, the genuine remorse, but also the habit of escape, the reflex to seek comfort instead of accountability. I can't, she said softly, because if I stay, I'll become part of the cycle. The woman who waits while you figure out if your family is worth coming back to. And I won't do that. Not to myself and not to them. She nodded toward the window, where Elena's silhouette moved gently in the kitchen, washing dishes, strong and solitary. She waited, and look where it got her. Julian's shoulders slumped. I never wanted you to feel like a placeholder. You didn't have to say it, Clara said. You showed it. By bringing me here to their place without even checking. By assuming your past would just move aside for your new chapter. He stared at his boots, snow melting at his feet. I thought this place was empty. It never is, she said. Not for them. And not for you, apparently. A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the whisper of snow and the distant hum of the fire inside. Then Clara's voice softened, almost tender. You love them. I see it now. Not in grand gestures, but in the way your hands shook when your daughter hugged you. In the way you kept that drawing like it was sacred. I do, he whispered. I always have. I just forgot how to show it. Then show it now, she said. Not to me. To them. Stay. Not as the tycoon. Not as the lover. Just as their father. And let everything else fall away. He looked up, eyes glistening. What about you? She took a slow breath, releasing it like a prayer. I'll be okay. Better than okay. Because I'd rather walk away clean than stay tangled in someone else's second chance. Inside, the front door opened. Elena stood there, arms crossed, expression unreadable. She didn't look at Julian. Her gaze settled on Clara. The East Wing bedroom has extra blankets, she said simply. And hot water still works. Storm's getting worse. You shouldn't be out here. Clara nodded. Thank you. As she passed Elena, their eyes met. Two women who'd loved the same man in different seasons, each carrying wounds the other understood without words. Elena gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Not forgiveness, not friendship, but acknowledgement. Clara stepped inside, leaving Julian alone in the snow. He didn't follow right away. He stood there, head bowed, as if the weight of every choice he'd ever made had finally settled on his shoulders. Then, slowly, he turned toward the door. Not to Clara, not to escape. Instead, he followed the sound, faint but unmistakable, that had been calling him all night. Laughter, from the den. He found them curled together on the oversized sofa beneath a patchwork quilt Elena must have brought from home. Leo was reading aloud from a dog-eared copy of The Snowy Day, his voice serious but sweet. Milo leaned against him, eyes half-closed but listening. Ava sat cross-legged on the floor, building something small and lopsided out of pine cones and twigs. They looked up as he entered. Ava held up her creation. It's you, she said simply. With a hat. Julian's throat tightened. He knelt beside her, the floor cold even through his trousers. It's perfect. She studied him, head tilted. Are you sad? He almost said no. Almost gave them the polished answer, the one he'd used in boardrooms, in interviews, in every room where vulnerability was weakness. But here, in this den lit by firelight and honesty, that armor felt like a betrayal. Yes, he admitted. I'm sad I missed so much. Milo sat up a little straighter. Like what? Like your first snowball fight? Your first time skiing? The night you all stayed up past midnight watching the northern lights. He swallowed. I was in Tokyo that night, signing a deal for a building that's already been renamed. Leo closed the book gently. Did you think about us? Every second, Julian said, voice cracking. But I thought if I worked harder, built more, I'd be giving you a better life. I didn't understand that the better life was already here, with you. Ava crawled into his lap before he could stop her. Then stay, she whispered into his coat. Just stay tonight. You don't have to build anything. You can just be. He wrapped his arms around her, breathing in the scent of her hair, vanilla shampoo and wood smoke, and felt something inside him break open, not violently, but like ice thawing under spring sun. Soft, inevitable. From the doorway, Elena watched. She hadn't meant to. She'd only come to check if the extra blankets were dry. But the sight of him, kneeling on the floor, holding their daughter like she was the only thing keeping him from floating away, stopped her cold. He looked different, smaller somehow. Not the tycoon with the steel gaze and tailored suits. Just a man. Tired. Regretful. Present. Milo looked up and saw her. Mama, can Daddy sleep here tonight? Elena didn't answer right away. Her eyes met Julian's over the children's heads. No anger. No forgiveness. Just a question, are you really here or just passing through again? Julian held her gaze. Only if you say it's okay. She exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing just a fraction. The storms cut the road. No one's leaving tonight. She paused. There's a cot in the storage room. It's not the penthouse, but it's dry. Ava beamed. He can sleep next to my door. Elena gave the faintest smile, so brief Julian almost missed it. We'll see. She turned to go, but Julian spoke softly. Elena. She stopped. I didn't come here to disrupt your peace. I swear. I didn't even know. I know, she said without turning. That's what scares me. And with that, she disappeared down the hall. Julian sat for a long time with the children, listening to their sleepy chatter, answering questions about stars and snow and whether reindeer really fly. He didn't check his phone once. Didn't glance at the time. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about what came next, only what was now. Later, when Ava finally yawned and Leo's eyelids began to droop, Julian carried each of them to bed. Milo on his hip, Ava clinging to his neck, Leo shuffling beside him in fuzzy socks. He tucked them in one by one, smoothing covers, pressing kisses to foreheads, whispering, I love you, like it was both a prayer and a promise. As he turned to leave the room, Leo whispered, You'll be here in the morning, right? Julian paused in the doorway, moonlight spilling through the window behind him. I'll be right outside your door, he said. On the cot. Leo nodded, satisfied, and rolled over. In the hallway, the fire had dimmed to embers. The lodge was quiet except for the wind sighing through the pines. Julian found the cot exactly where Elena said it would be. Tucked beside the linen closet, folded neatly with a wool blanket on top. He was unrolling it when a soft voice came from the kitchen. You don't have to sleep on that. He turned. Elena stood in the doorway, wrapped in a faded blue robe, a mug of tea in her hands. She looked exhausted, beautiful, untouchable. There's a guest room, she said. Down the hall. It's warmer. He hesitated. Won't that be strange? She gave a tired half-smile. Everything about tonight is strange, Julian. Might as well be comfortable while the world falls apart. He nodded slowly. Thank you. She turned to go but paused. And Julian, yes, she didn't look at him. Don't go into their room again unless I say it's okay. Not because I don't trust you, but because they've built you into something perfect in their minds. And I need to know you're ready to be real. Not just the hero in their snow fort. His chest ached. I understand. She finally met his eyes. Good night. Good night, Elena. He watched her disappear into her room, door clicking shut with finality. Alone in the hallway, Julian leaned against the wall, closing his eyes. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside, something quieter had begun. A fragile, trembling thing, like the first breath after drowning. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. If Clara would leave at dawn. If Elena would ever truly let him back in. If the children would still call him Daddy once they saw his flaws up close. But for tonight, for the first time in years, he wasn't running. Inside the lodge, the air was still heavy with everything left unsaid. Julian woke before dawn, stiff from the narrow guest bed, his mind already racing. He lay there for a long moment listening to the soft creak of the house, to the distant sigh of wind, to the absence of city noise that usually drowned out his thoughts. For once, there was no phone buzzing, no assistant briefing him, no boardroom waiting, just stillness and the terrifying weight of presence. He dressed quietly and stepped into the hall. The children's door was slightly ajar. He didn't enter, didn't even approach. He just stood there, listening to their even breaths, 3 rhythms in harmony, and felt a swell of love so fierce it stole his breath. This was what he'd traded for corner offices and front-page deals. This quiet miracle of being needed, not for what he owned, but for who he was. A floorboard groaned behind him. He turned. Elena stood at the far end of the hall, wrapped in the same blue robe, hair loose around her shoulders. She held 2 mugs, steam curled from both. Without a word, she walked toward him and offered one. He took it, fingers brushing hers, just for a second, but the contact sent a jolt through him, like touching something long lost and suddenly found. "Thank you," he said, voice rough with sleep. She nodded, eyes on the children's door. "They'll be up soon." Full of questions, full of hope. She paused. "I don't want them hurt again, Julian." "I know." He took a slow sip, chamomile, just how he used to like it. "I don't either." They stood in silence for a while, side by side but not quite together, watching the closed door like it held the future behind its wood. Then Elena spoke, voice low. "Why now, after 2 years of birthday cards signed Love, Dad, and missed recitals in silence? Why show up here, like this?" He looked at her, really looked, saw the lines of fatigue around her eyes, the guarded softness in her mouth, the way she held herself like she was always bracing for impact. "Because I saw Clara looking at me the way you used to," he said quietly. "And I realized, I don't want someone to look at me like I'm worth loving despite who I am. I want to become someone worth loving. And that starts with them." He nodded toward the door. "With being honest. With showing up even when it's hard. Even when I'm not sure I deserve to." Elena's breath hitched just slightly. She didn't cry, but her knuckles whitened around her mug. Before she could respond, the door opened. Ava stood there, pajamas rumpled, hair wild, eyes wide with sleep and wonder. She blinked at them both, then broke into a slow smile. "You're still here," she said, as if it were the most miraculous thing in the world. Julian knelt. "I told you I would be." She ran into his arms, and he held her tight. So tight he feared he might crush her, but not tight enough to ever let go. Behind her, Leo and Milo appeared, rubbing their eyes, but the moment they saw him, their faces lit up. "You didn't disappear," Milo whispered, like he'd half expected to wake up alone again. "I'm not disappearing," Julian said, voice thick. "Not anymore." Elena watched them, arms crossed, but the tension in her shoulders had eased. Still, she said nothing. Then came footsteps from the east wing. Clara appeared at the end of the hall, dressed in yesterday's clothes, her coat draped over one arm. She looked tired but calm, resolved. All eyes turned to her. Ava tilted her head. "Are you staying too?" Clara's gaze flickered to Julian, then to Elena, then settled on the children. "I think I've stayed long enough." Julian stood slowly. "Clara!" She held up a hand, gentle but firm. "It's okay. This isn't my story. It never was." She stepped closer, kneeling to Ava's level. "You're very lucky to have 2 parents who love you this much, even if they don't always know how to show it at the same time." Ava frowned. "Will we see you again?" Clara smiled, soft and sad. "Maybe, but not like this. Not as someone tangled in grown-up secrets." She stood, brushing snow from her coat. Snow she must have gathered while checking the driveway at dawn. The plow came through an hour ago. Roads open. Julian's heart dropped. "You're leaving now?" "I called a cab from the landline," she said. "It'll be here soon." She turned to him, eyes clear. "You don't need me to fix this, Julian. You need to fix it yourself. And you can't do that while looking over your shoulder at me." He wanted to argue, to beg, but he saw the truth in her words and in her eyes. She wasn't running. She was freeing him. Elena stepped forward then, surprising them both. "Let me drive you," she said. "The roads are still slick. And I'd like to talk. Just for a moment." Clara studied her, then nodded. "Thank you." As they moved toward the front door, Julian called out, "Clara!" She turned. He didn't know what to say. "Thank you for seeing me, even when I wasn't ready to be seen." She gave him a small, knowing smile. "You're welcome, Julian. Now go be their father." And with that, she stepped outside, Elena following close behind. Julian stood in the hall with his children clinging to his legs, watching through the window as the two women walked side by side to Elena's car. Two women who'd loved him in different ways, now united not by him, but by something deeper, the quiet courage to walk away from what no longer served love. The cab arrived. Clara got in without looking back. As the car pulled away, Ava whispered, "Is she sad?" Julian looked down at his daughter, snowflakes catching in her lashes. "Maybe, but sometimes, leaving is the bravest kind of love." Milo tugged his sleeve. "Does that mean you're staying?" Julian knelt again, placing a hand on each of their shoulders, meeting their eyes one by one. "Yes," he said, voice steady, sure for the first time in years. "I'm staying. As long as you'll have me." Leo, ever watchful, studied him. "Even when it's hard, even then." And as the sun finally broke through the clouds, casting gold across the snow, Julian Moreau, tycoon, ex-husband, absent father, stood not as a man who had everything, but as one who had finally realized what truly mattered. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Trust would take time. Wounds would ache, but already fading under fresh flurries. There was no dramatic farewell, no tears or accusations. Just the quiet dignity of a woman who'd chosen herself. And in that stillness, Julian felt something shift inside him, not relief, but responsibility. The kind that doesn't shout, but settles deep in your bones and says, "Now you must be better." Behind him, the children had retreated to the den, building a new fort out of couch cushions and blankets. Their voices floated in soft murmurs, giggles, the occasional "Daddy, can you hold this corner?" Each call a thread stitching him back into the fabric of their lives. He turned from the window and walked toward them. But before he could reach the den, Elena appeared in the kitchen doorway, her coat still dusted with snow from driving Clara down the hill. She didn't look at him immediately. Instead, she filled the kettle and set it on the stove, movements deliberate, controlled. "She's stronger than I expected," Elena said finally, still facing the counter. Julian leaned against the doorframe. "She is." Elena turned then, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "She asked me something on the way down. Said, 'Do you think he'll stay this time?'" She paused, eyes searching his. "What did you say?" "I didn't get to answer," Julian said. "But if I had, I'd say it's not about whether I stay. It's about whether I'm present. Staying is just geography. Being here, really here, that's the hard part." Elena studied him for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. The kettle whistled. As she poured water into 2 mugs, Julian stepped closer. "What did you tell her?" Elena handed him a mug, their fingers brushing again, this time without flinching. "I told her I didn't know, but that for the first time in 2 years, I wanted to believe he might." Julian's breath caught. He didn't dare speak, didn't dare break the thin ice of hope forming between them. Just then, Ava came running in, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. "Daddy, we found your scarf. The blue one. We're using it as the fort's flag." She held it up proudly. Faded, slightly frayed, but unmistakable. The scarf he'd forgotten 2 winters ago. The one they'd kept like a relic. Julian took it slowly, running his thumb over the wool. "You kept it all this time." Milo appeared behind her, shy but smiling. "We thought maybe you'd come back for it." Leo lingered in the doorway, arms crossed just like Elena's. Did you? Julian looked at his son. The boy who remembered too much, felt too deeply. I didn't come back for the scarf, he said softly. I came back for you. Leo held his gaze for a long second. Then, almost reluctantly, he nodded and walked over to the table, climbing onto a chair. Can you help us make pancakes? Julian glanced at Elena, seeking permission. She gave the faintest smile. Only if you don't burn them like last time. A flicker of memory passed between them. Julian attempting breakfast on their 5th anniversary, setting off the smoke alarm, laughing as Elena pulled him away from the stove. For a heartbeat, the past wasn't pain. It was just them. Deal, he said. He rolled up his sleeves and moved to the pantry. The children swarmed around him. Ava handing him the mixing bowl, Milo fetching the milk, Leo watching with careful eyes, as if still deciding whether to trust this version of his father. As Julian cracked eggs into the bowl, Ava leaned against his leg. Daddy, yeah, Bug. Will you come to my school play next month? It's Frozen. I'm Elsa. His hands stilled. You're Elsa, she nodded, eyes huge. I get to sing Let It Go. Mama says you used to sing it to me when I was a baby. He looked at Elena, stunned. She gave a small, private smile. You weren't the only one who remembered. Julian's vision blurred. He knelt, pulling Ava into a hug. I'll be there, he whispered fiercely. Front row. I'll even wear a tiara if you want. She giggled. Only if it's blue. Later, as pancakes sizzled on the griddle and Milo attempted to flip one with dramatic flair, Julian found Elena watching him from the counter. Really watching. Not with suspicion, not with resentment, but with something softer, something like curiosity. You're different, she said quietly. He flipped a pancake, managed not to burn it. I'm trying to be. She walked over, handing him a plate. Trying isn't enough, Julian. They need consistency, not just weekends and snowstorms. I know. He met her eyes. So tell me what you need. From me, as their father, not as your ex-husband. Just as someone who wants to do right by them. She hesitated. Then, voice barely above a whisper, be where you say you'll be. Call when you say you will. Don't promise what you can't keep. And when you fail and you will own it. Don't disappear. He swallowed hard. I can do that. Can you? She asked, searching his face. Because if you break their hearts again, I won't be able to piece them back together alone. I won't, he said. And this time, the vow wasn't grand. It was quiet, steady, rooted in daily choice. I'll show up, even when it's inconvenient, even when I'm tired, even when I'm not sure I'm good enough. Because they deserve that. Just then, Leo tugged his sleeve. Daddy, the pancake's burning. Julian turned quickly, laughing as he rescued it. Right? One step at a time. As they sat down to eat, for children's chairs pulled close, syrup dripping, laughter rising like steam, Julian felt something he hadn't in years, belonging. Not because he'd earned it, but because, for the first time, he was willing to fight for it. Outside, the sun climbed higher, melting the snow on the roof in soft drips. Julian stood by the sink, rinsing dishes, his movements slow, deliberate, as if afraid to break the delicate piece they'd just woven. He could still feel Ava's small hand in his, Leo's cautious nod, Milo's quiet, "You're doing good, Daddy." Words that meant more than any boardroom victory ever had. But beneath the quiet joy, a new kind of tension prickled his skin. He hadn't asked where Elena was staying in the lodge. He hadn't dared. But as he turned to dry his hands, he found her leaning in the doorway, arms loose this time, not crossed, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm thinking," he replied, folding the dish towel carefully, "about how I don't deserve any of this." She stepped inside, boots leaving faint snowprints on the wood. "Deserving isn't the point, Julian. Showing up is." He looked at her, really looked, not as the woman he'd lost, but as the one who'd held their world together when he let go. "Then let me show up properly. Not just today. Not just while the snow lasts, Let me be part of their lives. Not as a visitor, as their father. Elena exhaled slowly, walking to the window. Outside, the sun glinted off the snow, blinding and beautiful. It's not that simple. You have a life in the city, company, board meetings. Another woman. Not anymore, he cut in gently. Clara's gone, and even if she weren't, I wouldn't go back to that. Not after seeing what I almost lost. Elena turned, eyes searching his. Why now? What changed? He leaned against the counter, hands gripping the edge. I saw myself through Ava's eyes this morning. She looked at me like I was magic, like I'd hung the moon just by walking through that door. His voice cracked, and I realized I'd been so busy building an empire, I forgot to build a home. And when I finally came back, I almost didn't recognize the people waiting for me. A long pause. Then softly, they never stopped waiting. Julian's breath hitched. I know. Before he could say more, footsteps echoed in the hall, light, hesitant. Clara stood there. Julian froze. I thought you left. She stepped inside, cheeks flushed from the cold. The cab had engine trouble halfway down. Got stuck in a snowdrift. Elena's neighbor towed him back to his garage. She gave a tired smile. Looks like the mountain isn't done with us yet. Elena moved first. You're welcome to stay until the road's cleared again. There's no rush. Clara nodded, but her eyes were on Julian. I came back because I left something behind. He tensed. What? She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small, folded envelope. Cream-colored, slightly crumpled. This came in the mail last week. I meant to give it to you, but things got complicated. Julian took it slowly. His name was written in elegant script, the kind his legal team used for formal correspondence. But the return address was unfamiliar. He opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. At the top, embossed in gold, Caribou Ridge Lodge, Winter Registry Archives. His blood ran cold. Elena frowned. What is it? Julian's hands trembled as he read aloud, voice barely above a whisper. In accordance with your original reservation agreement dated December 21st, and confirmed under the name Elena Moreau, full occupancy of the West Wing is granted for the duration of your stay. Any duplicate booking under the name Julian Moreau is invalid due to prior claim. He looked up, stunned. I didn't know you'd booked it. The website showed it as available. Elena's eyes widened. I've been renting it every year since the divorce. Same dates, same wing. It's tradition. Clara crossed her arms, realization dawning. So the lodge double-booked. They gave the same place to both of you. Julian sat heavily in a chair, the letter limp in his hand. I didn't steal your sanctuary, Elena. I didn't even know it was yours. She stared at him, a long, searching look. Then, quietly, maybe that's the problem, Julian. You never asked where I went when you left. You never wondered if this place still mattered to us. He had no defense. Clara moved toward the door. I'll give you 2 space. No, Elena said suddenly. Stay, please. She turned to Julian, voice steadier now. This isn't just about a booking error. It's about you assuming you could return to our past like it was untouched. Like it was waiting for you, unchanged. She gestured to the children's laughter drifting from the den. But it changed. We changed. And you walked in like none of it mattered. Like your presence alone could rewrite everything. Julian stood, heart pounding. I never meant to erase what you've built. But you almost did, she said, eyes glistening. By bringing her here. By treating this place like it was just another escape. Clara stepped forward, voice calm but firm. I didn't know, Elena. Truly. And I won't stay if it hurts them. She nodded toward the den. They've been through enough. Julian looked between the 2 women. Both wounded, both strong, both holding pieces of his fractured life. And for the first time he saw not rivals, but reflections of his choices, his failures, his chance at redemption. He walked to the hallway, where the children's fort stood proudly in the center of the room, the blue scarf fluttering like a banner. He didn't go in. Instead, he knelt outside it, just within earshot. You know what, he called softly. 3 faces peek out from under the blanket. What, Daddy? Ava asked. He smiled, voice thick with emotion. I think I'll stay in the East Wing tonight. Give you your space. Leo frowned. But you said you'd stay. I will, Julian said gently. Just in my own room, so you can have your fort all to yourselves. And tomorrow, if you still want me, I'll be right here. Milo blinked. Even if we're mad, even then. Ava crawled out and hugged his neck. Okay, but you have to come back for Snow Angels. I promise. As she scampered off, Julian rose and turned to Elena and Clara, who stood watching from the kitchen. I don't get to decide how this unfolds, he said. You do. Both of you. I'll stay out of the way until you say otherwise. Elena studied him, really studied him. Then she walked over and placed a hand on his arm, just for a second. That's a start, she said. Outside, the wind picked up again, swirling snow against the windows like the past refusing to be still. But inside, for the first time, Julian wasn't fighting it. Doorways. He sat by the window in his narrow room, watching the world outside blur and reform under the slow fall of fresh snow. His mind quieter than it had been in years. He heard them, though, laughter drifting down the hall, the thump of boots on wood, Ava's voice singing off-key renditions of Let It Go as she twirled through the den. And beneath it all, a new rhythm, the sound of two women who had no reason to trust each other learning, tentatively, how to share space without war. Then, just before dusk, a soft knock came at his door. He opened it to find Elena standing there, arms wrapped around herself, snowflakes melting in her hair. Behind her, the hallway was empty. They're building a snow village, she said, voice low. Ava insisted you help with the ice castle. Julian's heart leapt, but he hesitated. Are you sure? She looked at him. Not with the guardedness of yesterday, but with something quieter, something like weary hope. They asked for you, not the tycoon, not the ghost, just their dad. He stepped out, pulling on his coat without a word. As they walked toward the front door, Elena paused. Clara's staying the night. The mechanic says the road won't be fully clear until tomorrow afternoon. Julian nodded. And you're okay with that? I'm not okay with much of what's happened, she admitted, turning to face him. But I'm starting to believe you didn't bring her here to hurt us. You just didn't think. I'm learning to, he said softly. Outside, the children were in a flurry of creation. Milo packing snow into molds, Leo sketching blueprints in a notebook, Ava directing operations with the solemnity of a general. There you are, she cried, spotting Julian. She ran over, grabbing his gloved hand. We need your big hands for the tallest tower. He knelt, letting her drag him into the center of their kingdom. What's the plan, Your Majesty? We're making a castle for the Snow Queen, Milo explained, cheeks pink with cold. But it needs a throne room, and a secret passage, and a moat, Leo added, arms crossed, eyes bright. With real water. Mama said it'll freeze overnight. Julian looked at Elena, who stood a few feet away, watching. Can I? She gave a small nod. Just don't flood the porch again. He grinned, really grinned, and rolled up his sleeves. For the next hour, he packed snow, carved turrets with a butter knife, and let Ava sit on his shoulders to crown the tower with a pine cone scepter. He laughed when snow slid down his collar. He listened, really listened, when Leo explained the engineering of arches. He held Milo's mittened hand when the boy quietly asked, Do you think real castles have dads in them too? They do? Julian said, voice rough. The best ones. As twilight painted the sky in lavender and gold, Clara appeared on the porch, wrapped in a borrowed scarf. She didn't join them, just watched from the steps, a quiet observer. Ava noticed her first. Clara, come see our castle. Clara hesitated, then walked over, boots crunching softly. It's magnificent, she said, genuine awe in her voice. Did you design it all yourselves? We had help, Leo said, glancing at Julian. Clara met his eyes, no jealousy, no bitterness, just quiet acknowledgement. Good help. Then Ava tugged Clara's sleeve. Can you be the Snow Queen? You're pretty enough. Clara blinked, then laughed. A real, surprised sound. I don't know about that, but I can guard the secret passage if you'd like. Milo beamed. Yes, you can be the guardian. And just like that, the tension that had coiled around them since their arrival began to thaw. Not all at once, but in small human moments. Clara helping Ava pack snow, Elena bringing out hot cocoa, Julian catching Elena's eye over the rim of his mug and seeing, for the first time, the ghost of their old warmth. Later, as they stood together watching the children dance around their snow kingdom, Elena spoke softly. You're good with them. I'm trying to be, Julian said. You're more than trying. She paused. They're happier today than they've been in months. He looked at her, snow catching in his lashes. Will you let me keep trying? She didn't answer right away. But when she finally spoke, her voice was steadier than he'd heard it in years. We'll take it one day at a time. No promises, no grand gestures, just presence. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reunion, but it was a door left slightly ajar. And as the first stars blinked to life above the frozen castle, Julian knew this was enough. For now. For them. For him. Because real love wasn't a fairy tale. It was showing up in the cold, with chapped hands and a broken past, end-turned bedroom. Julian stood alone on the back porch, hands tucked in his coat pockets, watching his breath curl into the cold air. He should have gone to bed, but sleep felt like a luxury he hadn't earned yet. Not after everything. The door creaked open behind him. He didn't turn. He already knew who it was. Elena stepped out, holding 2 mugs. She offered one without a word. He took it, their fingers brushing, warmth passing between them like a secret. Chamomile, she said. You always hated it. I've changed my mind, he said. And it was true. They stood in silence for a while, side by side but not touching, watching the moonlight glint off the snow-covered pines. Then Elena spoke, voice barely above a whisper. I found something today, while I was unpacking. Julian tensed. What? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into the pocket of her robe and pulled out a small, worn envelope, yellowed at the edges, sealed with a faded blue sticker shaped like a snowflake. His breath caught. You kept it, he said. I didn't know what else to do with it. She turned to him, eyes glistening in the dim porch light. After I lost the baby, I couldn't throw it away. It was the last thing that ever connected us to her. Julian's hands shook. He hadn't known. Not really. Elena had told him she'd had a scare that winter. The same winter he'd been finalizing his Asia expansion. He'd sent flowers, apologized for missing the doctor's appointment, moved on. But this was something else. He took the envelope with trembling fingers and opened it. Inside was a single ultrasound image, faint, grainy, but unmistakable. 3 tiny forms. His head snapped up. Triplets? Even then, Elena nodded, tears spilling over now, silent and steady. The doctors said it was rare, high risk. They warned me, but I was so happy. I thought it was fate. 3 souls, just like the ones I'd always dreamed of. She swallowed hard. I lost them at 11 weeks. All 3. The night you flew to Dubai for that merger. Julian's knees nearly buckled. He gripped the railing to stay upright. Elena, God, I didn't know it was that bad. You never told me. I tried, she whispered. I called you 3 times that night. Your assistant said you were in a meeting. I left a message. You never called back. He closed his eyes, shame crashing over him like a wave. I listened to that message months later, after the divorce papers were filed. I thought it was about paperwork. She let out a broken laugh. No, Julian. It was me, sobbing in a hospital gown, asking if you could just come home. He turned to her, tears streaming down his face. I am so sorry. I didn't know I failed you that deeply. You didn't just fail me, she said, voice raw. You failed her, the daughter we never got to hold. And when the real triplets came, healthy, miraculous, I was terrified. Every cry, every fever, I thought the universe would take them too. And you were never there to share that fear. Or the joy. He reached for her hand, but she didn't pull away. I can't change the past, he said, voice cracking. But I swear to you on her memory, on theirs, I will never miss another moment. Not out of ambition. Not out of fear. Not ever again. Elena studied him, really studied him, and for the first time he saw not just the woman he'd hurt, but the mother who'd carried unimaginable grief alone. Then she reached into her other pocket and handed him another envelope. This one was newer, carefully folded. What's this? He asked. A gift, she said softly. From them. He opened it. Inside was a drawing, bright crayon on construction paper. 3 stick-figure children holding hands beneath a giant heart. Above them, in Ava's looping script, our family is magic again. Tucked beneath it was a smaller note, in Leo's precise handwriting, Dad, if you stay, we'll teach you how to build snow forts that don't fall down. Love, Leo, Milo, and Ava. Julian pressed the papers to his chest, unable to speak. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. They've been waiting for you to be ready. Maybe I have too. He looked at her, tears freezing on his cheeks. Am I? She didn't answer with words. Instead, she stepped closer and rested her head against his shoulder, just for a moment. Just long enough for him to feel the weight of her grief, her hope, her fragile, trembling trust. Inside, the lodge was quiet. Outside, the stars watched in silence. And in that frozen moment, Julian Moreau didn't see redemption. He saw responsibility, not as a burden but as a gift, the chance to honor the daughter he never knew by loving the children he still had. He wrapped an arm around Elena, and though she didn't lean in fully, she didn't pull away. And for now, for tonight, that was enough. Because healing doesn't happen in grand declarations. It happens in quiet confessions under winter stars, in shared mugs of chamomile, in Julian rose before the children, drawn not by habit, but by need. He found Elena already in the kitchen, stirring oatmeal, her movements calm, less guarded than before. She glanced up as he entered, offered a small, quiet smile. No words, but enough to say last night mattered. He was pouring coffee when the east wing door opened. Clara stepped in, dressed in fresh clothes borrowed from Elena. A soft sweater, dark jeans. Her hair pulled back, face clear of makeup but not of resolve. She looked rested, resolved. Good morning, she said, voice gentle. Morning, Julian replied, setting down the carafe. Did the mechanic call? He did. Roads open by noon. She hesitated, then walked to the counter, pouring herself tea. I wanted to say goodbye properly. Elena turned from the stove. The children are still asleep, but they'll wake soon. Clara nodded. I'd like to see them before I go, if that's all right. Of course, Elena said, and the words held no edge, just quiet acceptance. Just then, the den door creaked open. Ava appeared first, rubbing her eyes, pajamas rumpled. Behind her, Leo and Milo shuffled in, still half dreaming. When Ava saw Clara, her face lit up. You stayed. Clara knelt, arms open. Just for a little while longer. Ava ran into her arms, and Clara held her gently, like she understood this was goodbye, but also a kind of blessing. Milo hovered shyly. Are you the Snow Queen? Clara laughed softly. Only for one night, but I'll always remember your castle. Leo crossed his arms, studying her. Will you come back? Clara met his eyes, honest, unflinching. Not like this, Leo, but if our paths cross again, I'll say hello, and I'll ask about your snow forts. He nodded slowly, as if filing that away for later. As Elena served breakfast, bowls of warm oatmeal with berries and honey, Julian watched Clara sit at the table with them, not as an intruder, but as someone who'd passed through their storm and left it cleaner for it. Then, between bites, Ava looked up at Clara with wide eyes. Are you Daddy's girlfriend? The question landed like snow on bare skin, soft, but chilling. Julian tensed. Elena stilled. Even Milo froze mid-chew. Clara set her spoon down carefully. No, sweetheart. I'm not. Then why were you with him? Leo pressed. Ever the truth seeker. Clara took a slow breath. Because sometimes grown-ups get lonely, and sometimes they think being with someone new will fix the holes inside them. She glanced at Julian, then back at the children. But real healing doesn't come from running to someone else. It comes from turning back to the people you love and asking if they'll let you try again. Ava frowned. So, you're leaving because Daddy needs to fix his holes? Clara smiled tenderly. I'm leaving because your family needs space to heal, and because I deserve a love that doesn't live in someone else's shadow. Milo tilted his head. Will you be sad? I'll be okay, Clara said, voice thick but steady. Because walking away from something beautiful doesn't mean it wasn't real. It just means it wasn't mine to keep. Julian's chest ached. He hadn't known she saw it that way, as something sacred even in its ending. Elena reached over and placed a hand on Clara's for a brief moment. A silent thank you. A sisterhood forged in shared pain. After breakfast, as the children helped Clara pack her few belongings, Julian stood in the doorway of the East Wing room, watching Ava carefully fold a small snowflake drawing to give her. I made it for you, Ava whispered. So you remember us. Clara knelt, eyes glistening. I could never forget you. When the taxi arrived an hour later, they all walked her to the door, Elena, Julian, and the 3 children bundled in coats and hats. Thank you, Clara said to Elena, pulling her into a brief, sincere hug, for your kindness. Then she turned to Julian. They didn't embrace. Didn't need to. You'll be all right, she said softly. He nodded. Because of you. She gave him one last look, full of sorrow but also peace, then turned to the children. Be kind to your dad, she said with a gentle smile. He's learning. And with that, she stepped into the car, window rolling down just enough for her to wave once as it pulled away. Ava waved back until the car disappeared around the bend. Then she turned to Julian, snow catching in her lashes. Now it's just us again. He knelt, pulling all 3 into a quiet hug. Yes, he whispered into their hair. Just us. Elena stood a few feet away, arms crossed, but her eyes were soft. And as the sun climbed higher, melting yesterday's tears into tomorrow's hope, Julian understood this wasn't a fairy tale with a perfect ending. With Clara gone, the lodge settled into a new rhythm. Not the brittle quiet of before, but something warmer, more alive. Julian stayed in the East Wing as promised, but he was present, helping with breakfast, reading stories at night, sitting with Milo when he couldn't sleep, teaching Leo how to track animal prints in the snow. He didn't push, didn't perform, he just was. And yet, something still lingered beneath the surface. It was on the 3rd morning after Clara's departure that Julian found it. He'd gone to the storage closet for extra firewood when his foot caught on the edge of an old canvas bag tucked behind stacked blankets, the one Elena used for winter trips. The zipper was slightly open. He meant to close it, nothing more, but a corner of paper stuck out. Instinct or guilt made him pull it free. It was an ultrasound, older, more faded than the one Elena had shown him. The date at the bottom made his breath stop. March 14th, 2 years ago. Weeks before the divorce was even filed. His hands trembled as he turned it over. Written on the back, in Elena's handwriting, shaky, tear-smudged, was a single line. I was still bleeding when you left for Zurich. You never asked why. Julian sank onto the floor, the paper crumpling slightly in his grip. He remembered that trip, a critical acquisition. He'd kissed her goodbye at dawn, told her he'd be back in 3 days. She'd looked pale, exhausted, but he'd chalked it up to stress. He hadn't asked, hadn't stayed, hadn't noticed the way she held her stomach like it ached with more than fatigue. He'd missed it all. Now, kneeling in the dim closet, the truth crashed over him. She hadn't just lost a pregnancy. She'd lost it alone, while he packed his suitcase and kissed her cheek like nothing was wrong. His vision blurred. He pressed the image to his chest, as if he could somehow absorb the pain he'd ignored. Footsteps approached. He didn't look up. Julian Elena stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes flicking from his face to the paper in his hands. I found it, he whispered. I didn't know. I didn't realize it happened so close to the end. she finished softly, stepping inside. She didn't take the ultrasound, just leaned against the doorframe, staring at the floor. I tried to tell you, the night before you left. I said, I don't feel right. You said, take a nap. You'll feel better when I get back. Her voice broke. I lost her that night, Julian, while you were signing papers in a hotel suite. He looked up, tears streaming freely now. Why didn't you tell me when I got back? Because you came home talking about stock prices and expansion plans, she said, voice hollow. And I was sitting on the bathroom floor, holding a pregnancy test that would never turn positive again. She wrapped her arms tighter around herself. I didn't want your pity. I wanted your presence. And you weren't there to give it. He stood slowly, the ultrasound still clutched in his hand. I can't undo that, but I can honor her now. Elena finally met his eyes. How? By remembering her. He stepped closer, voice raw. By telling the children one day that they had a sister, a quiet, brave little soul who came too soon. By never letting ambition blind me to what's real again. Elena's breath hitched. You'd do that, speak her name? I already have, he said. In my head. Every night since I saw that first ultrasound. He reached out, slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he gently took her hand. Let me carry this with you. Not your grief, just the memory. So she's not forgotten. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. Her name was Alara, she whispered. I picked it the day I found out I was pregnant. Alara, Julian repeated, tasting the name like a prayer. It's beautiful. A silence settled between them, not empty, but full. Full of sorrow, yes, but also something new, shared remembrance. Just then, Ava's voice floated from the hallway. Daddy, Mama, we found fox tracks. They turned. Ava stood there, bundled in red, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with discovery. Behind her, Leo and Milo peered around the corner, snowflakes in their hair. Julian quickly tucked the ultrasound back into the bag, but not before Elena saw. She gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod, thank you. Then she smoothed her face into calm and stepped forward, kneeling to Ava's level. Fox tracks show us. As they followed the children outside, Julian lingered for just a moment, placing a hand on the closet door. He didn't speak, didn't need to, but in his heart he made a promise, not just to Elena, not just to the children, but to the daughter he never held. I will be better. For all of you. Outside, the sun glinted off the snow, and the world felt both broken and whole at once. And as Julian watched Elena kneel in the snow with their children, tracing the delicate path a wild fox had left in the night, he realized this was his real work now. Not building empires, but tending to what love had already given him. Even the parts that ached. Escaled Alara's garden. A secret place only they understood. Elena had tucked them in, humming an old lullaby Julian hadn't heard in years. The one she used to sing when he'd come home late, standing in the doorway just to watch. He was staring into the dark pines when the door creaked open behind him. He didn't turn. He knew her step now, the soft tread of someone who'd learned to move without demanding space. Elena stepped beside him, holding 2 mugs. She handed him one. No words, just steam curling between them in the cold. They stood like that for a long while, shoulders almost touching, watching their breath mingle in the air. Then, softly, you didn't have to stay out here. I wanted to, he said. Give you time with them. You're one of them, Julian, she replied, voice low. You don't have to keep waiting on the edges. He looked at her then, really looked. The firelight from inside caught the gold flecks in her eyes, the faint lines at the corners that hadn't been there before the divorce. She was tired, strong, real. I'm afraid if I step too far in, he admitted, I'll break something that's finally healing. Elena wrapped both hands around her mug, as if holding warmth close. You already broke it. Now you're the only one who can help us put it back together. Carefully, honestly, without pretending the cracks don't exist. He nodded slowly. I see that now. A silence settled, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said, and everything they were finally ready to. Then Elena turned to him, eyes searching. Why did you really come here, Julian, not just to escape? Not just for Clara. What made you choose this place? Of all places, to disappear, he exhaled, breath fogging the air. Because this was the last place I remember feeling like a whole person. Not a CEO. Not a failure. Just a man who loved his family. He looked toward the window, where the children's shadows moved faintly behind the curtain. I thought if I came back, maybe I'd remember how to be him again. Elena studied him for a long moment. And have you? I'm starting to. She took a slow sip of tea, then spoke so quietly he almost missed it. I miss him too. The man who sang off-key in the kitchen. Who stayed up all night with Milo during fevers. Who held me when I cried over nothing. I'm still that man, he said, voice rough. He just got lost under everything else. She turned to face him fully now. Then stay lost here, with us, not as a visitor, not as a penance, but as their father, as someone who chooses this every day. His throat tightened. Do you think I can be trusted to do that? I don't know, she said honestly. But I'm willing to find out if you are. He reached for her hand, not to pull her close, just to hold it, to say I'm here. She didn't pull away, and in that small, fragile connection, skin to skin, breath to breath, he felt something shift, not with fanfare, but with the quiet certainty of roots sinking into thawing ground. Inside, Ava's voice drifted through the open window. Mama, Daddy, the stars are out. They turned. Ava stood in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, eyes wide with wonder. Behind her, Leo and Milo peeked out, pajamas rumpled, hair wild. Come look, she urged. There's a whole sky full of them. Elena smiled, the first real, unguarded smile he'd seen in years, and took Julian's hand, tugging him gently toward the door. Come on, she said. They're waiting. And so they went. Not as exes, not as strangers, but as parents, side by side, stepping into the starlight with their children between them. Above, the sky burned with constellations. Below, footprints merged in the snow. And somewhere in the quiet, the ghost of a daughter named Alara watched over them all. Not as a wound, but as a reason to love more fiercely, more fully. Ava pointed upward, mittened hand, trembling with excitement. That one's blinking. Is it saying hello? That's a plain bug, Julian said softly, voice rough with something tender. No, Leo corrected, squinting. That's Sirius, the brightest star. I read about it. He paused, then added quietly. Do you think Alara can see us from up there? The question hung in the air like a snowflake suspended in time. Elena's breath hitched. Julian felt it. Felt the tremor in the hand still resting lightly in his. Before either could answer, Milo whispered. I left her a snowflower in the garden. Do you think she got it? Julian knelt, pulling all three close. I think she knows, he said, voice breaking just slightly. And I think she's smiling. Elena sank down beside him, wrapping an arm around Milo. She's with us, she said, her voice steady but thick with emotion. Not in the sky here. She touched her chest. In how we love each other. In how we remember. Ava leaned her head against Julian's shoulder. Will we always come back here to remember her? Every winter, Julian promised. As long as you want to. Leo studied his parents, his small face serious in the starlight. Does this mean we're a family again? Elena and Julian exchanged a glance. No words. Just a lifetime of understanding passing between them in a breath. We're your family, Elena said carefully. We always were. Just different now. And better, Milo asked, hope trembling in his voice. Julian pulled him closer. We're trying to be. They stayed like that for a long time. Wrapped in silence, in stars, in the fragile warmth of something mending. Then, one by one, the children began to yawn. Their energy spent by snow, stars, and the quiet magic of being truly seen. Inside, Julian helped tuck them in, Ava clutching a stuffed fox, Leo already half asleep with his book open, Milo whispering, "Good night, Daddy," like it was the most natural thing in the world. He lingered in the doorway, watching them breathe. When he turned, Elena was there, leaning against the opposite wall, arms crossed, but her expression softer than he'd seen in years. "You stayed," she said. "I meant to," he replied. "But I think I'm finally learning what that really means." She walked closer, stopping just an arm's length away. "It means showing up when it's hard, when you're tired, when you'd rather run." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "You've done that this week, even when you didn't know how." He didn't dare touch her, but his voice was raw with truth. "Because losing you, losing them, was the only thing that ever truly broke me. And I won't survive losing you again." She swallowed hard. "I'm not promising forever, Julian. I'm not asking for it," he said gently. "Just tomorrow, and the day after that. However long you'll let me be here." She studied him, really studied him, as if seeing past the suits, the headlines, the years of absence, straight to the man beneath. The one who'd knelt in the snow to build a fort, who'd wept over an ultrasound, who'd let his daughter call him Daddy, like it was a gift. Then, slowly, she reached out and brushed a snowflake from his coat. "You can stay in the guest room tonight," she said. "But tomorrow, I'd like you at breakfast, with us." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reunion. But it was an invitation. And as he stood there in the hallway, heart pounding like it had at 20, Julian knew this was more than he deserved. But he would spend every day proving he could be worthy of it. Later, long after the lodge had fallen silent, Julian stood at his window in the east wing, watching the moonlight silver the snow where the children's footprints still marked the earth. Leading from the porch to Alara's garden, then back again. He pressed a hand to the cold glass. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He felt called home. Not by grand gestures, not by second chances, but by 3 small voices saying Daddy. By a woman who still remembered his name, and by the quiet courage to stay. Julian woke before the sun fully crested the pines, already dressed, already waiting. Not with the restless energy of a man escaping his life, but with the quiet steadiness of one finally stepping into it. He stood in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee, watching steam rise like a silent vow. The guest room key sat on the counter and used. He hadn't slept much. Didn't need to. Every breath here felt like borrowed grace. Footsteps sounded behind him. Elena entered, hair loose, wearing the blue robe again. But her posture was different, lighter, as if she'd set down a weight she'd carried for years. She didn't speak at first. Just poured tea, her movements calm, familiar. "You're up early," she said finally. "I wanted to be here," he said softly. "When they wake." She looked at him over the rim of her mug. "You don't have to prove anything, Julian." "I'm not trying to prove anything," he said, turning to face her fully. "I'm trying to be something. Their father. Not the ghost who shows up with gifts and leaves with regrets. Just present." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. Slow, deliberate. "Then sit. Breakfast will be ready soon." As if on cue, the den door opened. Ava appeared first, rubbing her eyes, then froze when she saw Julian at the table. Her face lit like sunrise. "You stayed." He smiled, heart swelling. "I told you I would." She ran over, climbing onto his lap without hesitation. "Did you dream about snow forts?" "I dreamed about you singing, 'Let It Go,' off-key," he teased gently. She giggled, then grew serious. "Are you going back to your tall building today?" The question hung in the air, fragile as ice. Julian looked at Elena, then back at Ava. "Not today, and not anytime soon." He smoothed her hair. "I've asked my team to reschedule everything. For the next month. Maybe longer." Leo appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, but his eyes were wide. "You're really staying?" "I am," Julian said. "If you'll have me." Milo shuffled in last, clutching his stuffed wolf. "Even on boring days." "Especially on boring days," Julian said, voice thick. "Because those are the days that matter most." Elena set plates on the table. Pancakes, berries, the same breakfast from days before, but this time the air wasn't tense. It was warm, hopeful. As they ate, Julian didn't dominate the conversation. He listened, laughed at Milo's story about a talking squirrel, helped Leo cut his pancakes into shapes, let Ava braid his napkin into a crown. After breakfast, while the children cleared the table, Elena turned to him by the sink. "You canceled your meetings," she asked quietly. "I did. For how long?" "As long as it takes," he said. "To show them and you that this isn't a performance. It's a promise." She looked down, stirring her tea. "Julian, I need to say something." He turned off the faucet. "Okay." She took a breath, eyes glistening. "I spent so long resenting you for leaving that I forgot how to imagine you staying. And now that you're here, I'm scared. Not that you'll leave again, though part of me always will be, but that I'll start hoping too hard. That I'll forget how much it hurt." He didn't reach for her, just met her gaze. "Then don't hope for me. Hope with me. Let's build something new. Not the old life, but something real. Something that fits who we are now." She searched his face. "What does that look like?" "It looks like me asking, every day, what do you need? And it looks like you telling me, even when it's hard." He paused. "It looks like co-parenting with respect, with honesty, maybe one day with trust." She didn't answer right away, but when she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "Then start today. Call your office. Not just to cancel, but to delegate. To show them you're serious." "I already did," he said. "My COO's taking over operations. I'll stay on as chairman, but day to day I'm stepping back." Elena blinked. "You do that after everything you built?" "I built an empire," he said quietly. "But I almost lost my soul. My children don't need a billionaire father. They need a present one." Just then, Ava tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, can we go to the lake? The ice is shiny." He looked at Elena. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Just be back before dusk." As Julian pulled on his coat, Milo slipped his hand into Julian's. "Will you push me on the ice?" "I'll push you both," Julian said, ruffling Leo's hair as he joined them. Elena watched them go from the window, 3 small figures and 1 tall one, walking together through the snow, footprints merging into one path. Later, as she washed the last dish, her phone buzzed. A message from Clara. "Saw the news. Moreau Group restructuring. You must be proud." Elena stared at the screen, then typed back, "Not proud. Hopeful." She set the phone down and looked out the window again. Julian was kneeling on the frozen lake, helping Ava balance on a flat stone, laughing as she wobbled. Leo stood beside him, pointing at something in the distance. Milo was already building a snow mound at the shore, probably another shrine. And for the first time in years, Elena didn't feel like a woman guarding ruins. She felt like a woman witnessing rebirth. Not because Julian had returned as a hero, but because he'd returned as a man. Flawed, humbled, choosing every moment. And yet, beneath the quiet joy, something remained unsaid. It was on the 6th evening, as the sun bled gold across the snowfields, that Clara's words returned to him. Not as a ghost, but as a truth he could no longer ignore. He found Elena on the back porch again, wrapped in her blue robe, watching the last light fade behind the pines. He didn't knock, didn't announce himself, just stepped out and stood beside her, hands in his pockets, breath curling in the cold. "You've been quiet all day," she said without looking at him. "I've been thinking," he replied. He took a slow breath. About Clara. About what she said before she left. Elena turned then, eyes searching his. "Which part?" "That walking away from something beautiful doesn't mean it wasn't real." He met her gaze, voice steady but raw. She was right. What she and I had, it was real. But it wasn't mine to keep. Because my heart was always here. Even when I didn't have the courage to admit it. Elena's breath caught just slightly. Julian stepped closer, not touching, but close enough that she could see the truth in his eyes. "I told myself I was starting over with her. But I wasn't. I was just running from you. From us. From the mess I made. And in doing that, I hurt her too." "She knew that," Elena said softly. "That's why she left." He nodded. But I need to make it right. Not for her. For me. For them. He nodded toward the window, where the children's shadows moved behind the glass. They deserve parents who choose each other, not out of obligation, but because they've done the work to heal. Elena wrapped her arms tighter around herself. Julian, I'm not asking you to stay for me. I never have. I know, he said gently. But I'm staying because I finally see what I almost lost. And because I love you, not the woman you were, but the one you are now.